Welcome to the Grinders Table, the podcast where we sit with C-suite executives and founders who are taking their industry by storm to figure out how you can build an exceptional career and business. Together, we'll try to uncover how they are both defying the odds and what you can learn from their experience.
My guest today chose to return to Morocco from France when most of his peers were seeking opportunities abroad. That decision led him to transition or transform an industry through operational excellence and then be part of building a university that is rivaling Stanford, in my own opinion, and now leading the investment arm that is changing how people see African innovation. He believes Africa isn't just catching up, he believes that Africa is poised to lead in solving some of the biggest challenges that we experience. Today, we explore why Yassine made such a big decision and all the learnings we can get from all he's going to share with us. I really don't like introducing people, so I'm going to allow Yassine introduce himself. Yassine, who exactly is Yassine?
Hi, on. Thank you for having me. Let's say I'm just a serial entrepreneur, passionate about entrepreneurship. And I've been trying also to be one of these builders of the future of the African continent when it comes to the startup ecosystem. So I'm an entrepreneur. I'm also a believer in the capacity and the potential of the African continent.
And where would you say your passion came from? I know for some people they will say, well, they grew up with entrepreneurial parents. Some people will say, they grew up in an environment that enable them want to be entrepreneurs or want to be builders? For you, where did that motivation come from?
Look, my parents were professors, and so I never thought. I mean, I was younger. I mean, I never thought I'd be an entrepreneur. It came very naturally when I was studying engineering. So I'm passionate about coding, about infography, and people who saw the work I did for passion and just for fun, they started asking me doing work for them, and I was like amazed about the capacity to monetize what I like, to monetize my passion. That was amazing. I mean, that was the aha moment when I said I can do things that are driving me, but in the same time I can monetize them. And this is when I decided to, in a very early stage, start to be an entrepreneur by building two companies, an industrial company and also a digital company. At the time, it was like you needed to code everything from scratch. CMS didn't exist at the time. And it was amazing for me to see how I can meets the needs of my clients, put a smile on their faces by doing what I like the most: coding, developing, design, and also building solutions. So I would say this was like something that I learned during my early days, and it was not something that was necessarily educated by. And also at the time, we didn't have startups in our ecosystem. We didn't have big exits. We didn't have entrepreneurs raising rounds after rounds. So I think I had a chance just to learn it the hard way. And this is why I think that I kept being entrepreneur even in my times within big corporates. So I always tried to do something new. I always tried to build something to meet the needs of an organization, of a department, of a client.
Yeah, you've actually touched on something that I wholeheartedly believe in, that you don't actually have to have a business or start a business to be entrepreneurial. And I'd like us to dig more into that. When you say you were entrepreneurial even within big corporates, what do you mean?
Look, I think being entrepreneur is not a job, it's a mindset. Being entrepreneur means that when other people see problems, you see challenges, you see solutions, you see opportunities. When other people see a red ocean, you see the blue ocean. So this what makes a difference between an entrepreneur and someone else. And you strive to find solutions for these problems. This is something you can do within your startup or within your department or within a corporate or by being a freelancer. So I think, I mean, anyone who is an entrepreneur, it's the way he do things, it's the way he sees things, it's the way he motivates himself.
Actually agree with that totally. Now let's explore your moving back to Morocco when most of your colleagues would have stayed back in France. And I asked this question because I run into quite a number of people in the diaspora that either want to move back or exploring the thought of, building something back home. What motivated you to return back to Morocco?
I think um, coming back to your home country isn't just a move. It's a big decision. I mean, there are many reasons why people go back home. I can only talk about myself. So for me, it was a decision, and it was a way for me to be accountable of the kind of future I want to help shape for my children, for the next generation. I always thought of myself as a militant. I always thought of myself as part of a group, and my group is the African continent. So my role in this life, I mean, let's be philosophical a little bit, but my role in this life is to help my group thrive. And you cannot, I mean, for me, I cannot do it if I'm not back in my country, in my continent. So I think I just, I just think that I could never keep optimizing someone else's system. I want to come back because I wanted to help build my system, our system as an African continent. And of course, there is also a rational reason behind it. At the time, I mean, because I moved back to Morocco and to Africa twice. Once when I was in France, and the second time when I was in the US in Silicon Valley. And each time, the rational part of the reasoning was that I see that the African ecosystem is maturing. Of course, slowly but surely. And there was a momentum that I felt. I can't explain, I can't give you KPIs about it, but I felt there is a momentum. And of course, there is a gap. But my entrepreneurial mindset said that, of course, this gap needs builders who understand how to scale, structure systems, people who did it before. And only people like us who already works in ecosystems, mature ecosystems, can do it. And of course, I'm not talking about savers. I'm talking about co-builders. African continent doesn't need savers. They need people who execute, who do things, who put their hands in at work. And for me, I wanted to be one of these, let's say, warriors who help shape the future of Africa.
It's interesting you say Africa doesn't need savers, and there is this thing where, well, people say it and people don't say it out loud, that we find people coming into the continent with a savior complex because they see the way things are done in the various places they've existed in and think that when they get into Africa, they can change everything. But we find out that the long-term effects of this savior complex is not always positive. But now, so looking at geopolitics and looking back at the US and seeing now that, aid funding has been cut, and that has affected maybe the execution of certain projects on the continent. How do you think we as a continent need to start addressing, solving our problems for us and by us, rather than waiting for somebody with a savior complex to try to address the issues for us?
Yeah, it's very simple. Nobody is going to be coming back to help us building our innovation ecosystem for a very simple reason. I mean, there is nothing mystic about it. The first is, if you bring consultants, if you bring people from Silicon Valley, for instance, or from any other very mature ecosystem, the first thing that they will try to do is to copy paste because they don't know how it works in Africa. And this is why I was talking about the African diaspora as having a key role in doing this, because the African diaspora know how the ecosystems should work, but at the same time they have the background and they know the constraints of the African continent. And the problem is, if we try just to copy paste the systems that work elsewhere, it won't work here. Yes, when we talk about building something in Africa, maybe some people will say this is like premature. Africa can't do it because it's a latecomer. I don't believe in that. I think Africa is the test bed for the future. There are many big issues in Africa, like climate adaptation, food security, digital identity, and inclusion. The problem of the infrastructure, all these are global challenges. But Africa leaves them first. We are the most, we face these problems every day. And the best way to build the best solution for a problem is to live within this within this with this problem every day. So I think we can solve them here, of course, under resource constraints, of course, fragmented markets, but there is a real urgency. We don't solve them only for Africa, we will solve them also for everyone else. So we need to build the IP here within the continent. We need to build the companies. We need to build the talent pipelines and also the playbooks on how to build in complexity, in the African complexity. And of course, This is a huge competitive advantage that Africa will put on the table. And of course, what I want to say, and what I always say, is Africa needs to stop being a case study. It needs to be a blueprint of how innovation should be built.
We're still going to go into your time at OCP and then, UM6P, but you talk about constraint quite a lot. We know that building in Africa as the continent has its own various constraints, as with any other environment, to be honest. Do you believe that constraints actually drive innovation in better ways than abundance cannot?
Yes, this is very simple. I mean, of course, I'm not saying that we don't need capital, we don't need infrastructure, we don't need incubators. I'm not saying that, but when there is urgency and when we have the talent, we have entrepreneurs, we have the right type of mindset that can drive solutions for these problems, yes, I do believe in that. Working under constraints is the best way to build something huge. And of course, a necessity in general, a necessity or constraint makes you feel like there is no luxury in building innovation. Makes you feel like you need to do it. I'll give you a few examples, maybe if you want. I mean, let's talk about AI for agriculture. In Africa, this is not something. This is not something luxurious. We need to incorporate AI in agriculture if we want Africa to be the saver of the world, not only of Africa, because Africa is one of the most in terms of the capacity of Africa to feed the world. Africa is the only continent in the world that will be able to do that in the future. And we need AI to do it efficiently. Same thing for advanced materials for housing and for energy or bio or climate tech, because Africa is at, let's say, the front lines of every systematic crisis in the world. Imagine if Africa decides to build its infrastructure like Europe and the US did. Can you imagine the impacts on the world? We have like hundreds of billions of dollars in terms of need of a new infrastructure. The only way to do it while saving the world is to do it in a green way, by respecting the climate and by incorporating solutions that are only adapted to the African continent. So yes, when there is an urgency, when there are constraints, just the sweet spot of constraints, we can build something big. But of course, we need seed money, we need pre-seed, we need good universities, we need infrastructure, and this is why I was very amazed by how UM6P has been built, because it's a showcase, it's a showroom of what Africa can do, of the capacity of the African continent. When you have just the right amount of infrastructure, UM6P, even if you say this can become like the Silicon Valley of Africa, it's not in terms of the amount of capex investment. It's nothing compared to the big universities in the world, but look at the results. So we need just the right amount, sweet spot between scarcity and abundance. And I think Africans who are very hungry and they want to show to the world that they can build solutions here in this continent, can do amazing things.
I also believe that UM6P is also taking a distinctive African approach to solving our own problems. And I respect that and I love that. But at the core of that is culture, right? The culture of excellence, culture of finding solutions, that entrepreneurial culture. How have you been able to build that into whatever systems you've worked in, from OCP to UM6P Ventures and to anything that you do?
Look, I think the first. Let me. I'll say something that I personally believe in. So I think that yes, there are many things that need to be there as ingredients if you want to be successful as an ecosystem, as a company, as an individual. But the thing that matters the most is the safe belief. If you believe in yourself, either you're an organization or an individual or whatever, if you really believe in yourself, all the other constraints can collapse in front of your ambition, in front of your drive. But if you don't have the self belief, if you say to the people, Africa can be correctly positioned in the global scene of innovation, but when you go back with your friends, you say, wow, this is like a long shot. This won't happen. Believe me, it won't happen. If you believe, if we believe as a continent, as the individuals as well, that we can change the paradigm of the, let's say, the Africa or even the South Hemisphere, and that we have a chance today thanks to many things that are happening today: AI, democratization of education, many things that are happening. Also, many initiatives across the continent, like UM6P, happening, showing to the world that yes, it is possible. If we continue believing in ourselves, everything is going to be easier. And this is the case not only for Africa, for any entrepreneurs all over the world. If you don't believe in yourself, even to the point that it would maybe be an illusion. Of course, you need the means of your ambition, but you need to believe in yourself first. So I think Africa needs first to say, no, we can position ourselves in the deep tech economy. It's possible to build IP. It's also possible to have patents here that are going to be the basis of a new technology that is going to be solving the problems, the world's problems. So this is like very important in terms of culture. And in UM6P, everyone believes in our capacity to contribute in doing things. At least we say that we need to try. It's very hard because otherwise we don't have, there is no excuse. If you don't try and you say, no, we can't, it's like, there is nobody else to blame but yourself. Second, the diaspora already talks about it. If you go to UM6P campus, among every three people you're going to be meeting, one of them is coming from the diaspora, the African diaspora. And these people, when they say they believe that we can, as a country, do things, they say it's based on something very factual because they already did it. And they see the infrastructure, they see the drive, and they see what they're building and what is being built. So, yes, the diaspora is also a very important ingredient. And this is why I think we can push things. And finally, we can't ignore it. Today, there is a big inflection point in the human civilization is the advent of AI. I mean, the most important skill before that we didn't have as humans is how to answer the questions. We needed to answer the questions that somebody else is asking. We needed to build things from scratch. But now the most important skill is going to be, I mean, I think it's already happening, is asking the question itself, not answering the question. So today, the most important skill is to be the designer of a system. And of course, AI can help you build it. Of course, you need infrastructure, but at least there is, let's say, there is a momentum, there is a potential, there is a new thing happening in the world that the African continent can use to build something new. And I think nobody needs to miss this opportunity.
Yeah, and again, AI is still an enabler. It's a tool. It is those that can use the tool that eventually succeed. I don't think AI will replace everybody or every founder or anybody in the corporate job. I think it's people that know how to use AI more effectively, especially in the African context, that would actually win. You touch on self-belief. I'm curious for you as a person, how do you maintain your self-belief? I know that for every successful founder or entrepreneur, any successful person, they have a healthy dose of delusion where sometimes things are not working, but you say, nah, this is me, I'm going to do this. But for you, how do you do it? How do you wake up every day with the same hunger, with the same motivation?
Look, I'll be frank with you. I mean, there are days when, I have I doubt about myself, especially when you fail in something, when there is a big failure, when you have a pushback from the whole ecosystem. You feel bad about it and you say, maybe I'm not the guy. So feeling bad from time to time, that's totally okay. I'm not saying that you need to believe in yourself every day, every minute. So the most important thing is when you fail, you need to stand up very quickly and you need to continue pushing. And how I do it is very simple. I say, okay, what are my options? What's my options? I mean, the first option is whenever I have a problem, whenever I fail, whenever I have a technical problem, whenever there is a big issue in the things I'm doing, and it's going to happen for every entrepreneur lifespan, in every entrepreneur lifespan, it's going to be happening very often. When something happens like that, there's two options. I mean, giving up and doing something normal between brackets, of course, but something that is not changing the things. And I ask myself, I mean, is this something I want to do? Is this something better than trying again and again and again? Knowing that if I'm resilient, I can push through and I can, at the end, do something different. My objective, my friend, is I don't want to, as I said, I don't want to be the saver. Just I want to be someone who contributes, more or less, in building something better for the next generation. And if you understand your mission this way, it's okay. I mean, it doesn't matter if you fail or not. What matters is how hard you try. And believe it or not, at the end, when you try harder, you will succeed at the end of the day because nothing can stand against resilience. Nothing. You can see mountains and you can see the rivers through resilience, how they can build paths in between mountains. So it's the same thing. If you're an entrepreneur, you believe in yourself again and again and again, you're going to be succeeded. And I mean, I'll give you the best example, which is Elon Musk, who failed many times and who should have, been retiring many times. I mean, if he was like a normal person. Now, the three first rockets in SpaceX exploded and nobody was believing himself. He needed, I don't know, to sell his houses to finance the first one. Same, he was fired from Zipline, I think, and he was pushed away from many companies. And he continued to believe in himself. He believes, even if he's not a rocket scientist, he's going to be rich in Mars. And even NASA doesn't believe that they could reach Mars soon, but he believes in that and is already achieving many milestones that will allow him to do so. So and many other examples, even within the African continent, can prove to the world that through resilience you can achieve. So the most important thing you need to keep in mind is you need to keep aligned in terms of value with who you are. And this is the most important thing. Because if you do something that doesn't align with this value, at the end you're not going to succeed. Let me explain this. If you want to build a startup only to build a startup or only for financial return, it won't work because you won't have the drive, enough drive to build through the difficulty, the complexity of the entrepreneurial journey. But if you have the drive, if it's aligned, if it's who you are, of course the byproduct is going to be financial returns. But this is not the most important thing. The most important thing is, do you believe or not?
Yeah, and I think you've touched on some of the things I'm going to ask next, but I'd like to understand your investment philosophy, given that you are investing mainly in a space that one is quite a it's not something that we typically invest in. Not many people have that skill and foresight to build in the deep tech space. Do you have a framework for identifying founders that will be able to succeed in that deep tech space? Or I mean, how do you go about it generally?
Yeah, that's a good question. So deep tech is different, even though there are many similarities between deep tech and shallow tech. Deep tech requires a lot of cash. It's a long cycle. So you need even more resilience, more mission driven entrepreneurs and founding teams. You need also, it's a big bet. The bet that you won't be able to, it's not like A B testing of our app. Where you're going to be just, talking with the clients or to check if there is a product market fit or not. When you do deep tech, you're building something huge. The rest in a blue ocean that nobody else, thought about. So what we try to do, especially in emerging markets, where there is no data, where or the data is often incomplete, late, misleading sometimes. The key isn't just more data. It's about the pattern recognition, is to see what these founders are doing. And let me explain this. So any great idea comes from an insight that the founders have about an inflection point, because timing is very important. So the inflection points, what is the inflection point? It's very simple. It's a series of ingredients that are timely when the founder is pitching you, that makes, creating a new industry possible. And I don't know if we can take not a deep tech case, but maybe an easier case, which is Uber, for instance. Uber is an amazing idea, but it would have been impossible without the inflection points where you have the GPS in the iPhone, when you have a need for more jobs in the San Francisco area, and when you have also the Facebook who started building the identity of the clients and the drivers, that started being a reliable tool to use. So all these elements came in the perfect time where Uber was a good idea, even though they couldn't even convince many investors at the time, but it was the perfect timing. And the insight was how to create an app that will create more jobs for drivers, that will also help thousands or millions of customers moving from point A to point B. So how I select founders and teams is I check if they have the capacity to see the pattern, to see these inflection points, what's going on in terms of deep technology, in terms of the advance of many things in the same time that will change in the industry. So I don't know if AI will ever be able to replace VCs for this, but the ability to read signals across products, team dynamics, and markets movements, this is the most important thing. It's close to the ground, of course, and you need to be able as an investor to see what scale looks like elsewhere as well. So you need to position yourself into the shoes of this next or future client and see if the products of this team is creating is gonna be solving a real problem. And at the same time, you need, as a deep tech investor, be able to understand the technology itself. You cannot outsource this. Many deep tech investors, they just give to someone, an expert, and they ask them about their opinion. That's totally something. I mean, this is super, super wrong. You need to be convinced yourself. You need to take the time to deep dive. Anything can be understood if you focus enough, if you take the time to deep dive a little bit, to understand what is the technology they're building. And is it possible really to de-log, and why this team is the perfect team to solve this or to build this product. So it's not easy. It's a little bit mix of some data points and also the art of reading through black boxes. But this is the only way to spot the best deep tech companies that are going to have the great execution skills to change things.
Yeah, and also as an investor, I mean, you also have to balance that um, empirical data with intuition or how you feel about a solution. How do you go about balancing that? Where your head is, looking at the data, then but your heart is also like, this founder is good, this founder knows what he's doing, or you have an affinity for the space he's building in. How do you balance those two things?
Look, in general, data, especially in Africa, is not a big lever to succeed in being a good investor. So you need the experience. You need also the personal conviction. You need a process that will help you see through the noise, especially in deep tech, where there's no traction to check. There's no numbers to check. I mean, in general, in early stage deep tech investments is always pre-revenue. So you need to see through the noise. So I would say it's like 60% intuition, experience, conviction, and 40% data-driven decisions.
Okay, I take that. That's really good. Okay, so we'll go into our rapid fire questions because I know we've taken a bit of your time. And in these rapid fire questions, what basically would happen is, I mean, I'll ask you really quick questions and you just answer with really short answers. Okay, so let's get right into it. What is one book or one person that has most influenced your thinking?
Pattern breakers.
Okay, but Pattern Breakers by,
Sorry?
you said Pattern Breakers.
Yeah,
By
yeah.
who? So that we could go find the
Mike,
book.
by Mike Mappels and Peter Zippelman.
Okay.
Yeah, you want me to say what it says?
You can go on. You can go on.
Yeah, because you said very short. So it's just, it's a set of ideas that show how entrepreneurs, investors, and corporate leaders, can dominate markets by seeing through the noise. This is what we were talking about. So it's a way, and also it's like a real case study because these are like investors and also professors in Stanford University. And they say why some startups succeed in changing the future and why others didn't. It's an amazing book to read, and I think any founder or investors who want to read through the lines of a pitch deck needs to see it.
Uh, right. What is one counterintuitive lesson you've learned about leadership?
So leadership is about showing the vision, is about also the capacity to delegate. It's not about the capacity to build in everything because it's just impossible. I mean, I always thought that being the leader of an organization is your capacity to be perfect in everything and have the capacity to work more and to help anyone in the organization. But you need to give up few of your power and you need to believe in your exec team. And this is not something very natural, not very easy. Whenever the size of the startup goes beyond 50 or something like that, it's very, very hard to stay a leader and to steer the company towards the right direction if you don't have the capacity to delegate.
Yeah. What is one technology that excites you most about Africa's future?
I think agtech and green tech are the two big sectors where Africa has a big leverage. We have a competitive advantage. We have the lands, we have the markets, we have also the capacity to be the exporter, the first exporters of food. And also the green is like a necessity. The whole world is going to be investing in green in Africa. So these are two sectors where we need to use smartly to leapfrog the African revolution.
Okay. What keeps you up at night?
All what we talks about today is how can I really contribute in the development of my country and my continent? Am I doing the right things? This is a very important question that I'm asking myself. And it's very hard to, when you're in the middle of the chaos, to say yes or no. But I hope that my contribution is at least positive.
And then the final question. Complete this sentence. In 10 years, Africa will.
Will be one of the leaders of deep tech in the world.
And I already see the role that you play in that. You've all been listening to Yassine. Yassine, thank you so much. But before we go, and before I forget, there is one more question I ask every guest on the podcast. And it's sort of, we always get varying answers. So between power, money, fame, and pleasure, I'd like you to rank which is most important to you and which is the least important to you and why.
Say it again.
Power, money, fame, pleasure. Which is most important to you, which is least important to you, and why?
That's easy, man. Pleasure first, then maybe money second, and fame and power.
Okay, pleasure. And why pleasure? Why pleasure at the top of the list?
It's easy. When it's about pleasure, you can do much more. There is no boundary between work and private life. You enjoy every day. You wake up early to have fun, and it's the best way to be present.
Thank you so much once again. I really, really enjoyed this conversation, and I know the listeners enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me, and good luck.
This has been the Grinders Table podcast, bringing you unfiltered insights from Africa's most compelling founders and business leaders. If you had found value in today's conversations, here's how you can help us amplify these stories. Take 30 seconds to share this episode with someone in your network who's building, investing, or curious about Africa. You'll be amazed at how many life-changing connections start from a single shared conversation. And if you're feeling generous, a quick rating and review goes a long way. It helps more founders and business leaders discover these powerful insights. Until next week, keep grinding.